My only experience of politics when I was younger was my local MP coming into an all-girls school to try and talk to young girls about politics, but he was sat on his phone the whole time.
Yeah.
And then when I actually spoke to him recently, and I brought up the fact that he was on his phone the whole time, his phone went off and he stopped having this conversation with me to go on his phone. And I was like, I'm so glad that you're not an MP anymore.
My parent came here in the 90s from Cyprus, can't speak English, brought up in one of the poorest neighbourhoods in London. I think seeing young people take ownership of their lives, for me, gives me a lot of satisfaction. You don't like going to the polling station?
No, I do. I'm just not going to be here.
I love going to the polling station. But it's just something that just feels good about it. Like, even the pencil, feels
okay.
like...
Welcome back to another episode of Girls Know Nothing. We all know that July the 4th is a huge date in the political calendar with the up-and-coming general election. I've had so many DMs from people asking how to register to vote, people saying they're not sure which direction to vote in, or even if their vote means anything. Well, today's episode is with CEO of youth-led organisation My Life, My Say and Hackney Bourough Councillor Mete Coban. Consider this episode a voting 101, focusing on how young people can figure out which direction they want to vote in and what to do if they don't know where to start. But I just want to preface this by saying that this episode is about neither of our own political affiliations, and it doesn't matter what your political standpoint is, it's always important for you to register and get out to vote. So welcome to the studio, Mete. Basically, I wanted to have this episode and this conversation with you because even though I don't have very many men on the podcast, you should feel privileged.
Yeah, I know. I do feel very privileged.
Lots of people obviously very nervous about the upcoming general election.
Yeah.
For a lot of different reasons. And a lot of people feel like they can turn to me for all the answers, and I don't have all the answers. I feel like you have all the answers. I have an answer for everything. Whether it's correct is a different story. So obviously, as somebody who kind of founded and spearheaded the Give an X campaign, thought it would make sense
together
to have
with you.
Yeah, but it was your baby. I
Yeah.
just was the pretty face behind it. No, I'm joking. But basically, obviously, a lot of young people were reaching out to me after they registered to vote last time. And we did get, I think it was
153,000 people.
Yeah.
113,045 aged between 18 to 34.
Yeah.
And just over 100,000 aged between 18 and 24. And 75,200 of those came directly from our links.
There you go then. See, I didn't even need to do it, or I should just let you talk to the camera for 30 minutes. But like, obviously that's insane. Obviously it doesn't account for all of the 4.5 million young people that were missing from the electoral roll. But that's why trying to do National Voter Registration Day this time round is so much more important than it was last time round, because it's the big general election.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you look at social media now and you look at the news, people are so desperate to like get out there and vote, but they're so unsure of what they want to do, or if a lot of young people are experiencing voter guilt if they vote and then it doesn't go the right way, or if they vote, is it even going to count towards anything because of the way that our electoral system works. So we're just going to like talk it out. This is going to be the time to like convince young people that voting is really important on the 4th of July or before, if you're postal voting or prop. Yeah.
Yeah. Postal vote before.
I've got to remember to do that.
Postal vote?
Yeah.
You don't like going to the polling station?
No, I do. I'm just not going to be here.
I love going to the polling station. It's like a 2-minute experience. It's very quick. Yeah, but it's just something that just feels good about it.
Maybe it's because you're going to the polling station in London, whereas like out of London, it's not that glitz and glamorous. I don't think.
I mean, the polling station I go to, it's not really glamorous, but like even the pencil, feels
okay.
like...
Mete, why is it crucial that young people register to vote in the elections?
So I think it's really important that young people register to vote in the elections, not just in this election, just generally, because ultimately what moves politicians is knowing that there is a constituency of people who they have to pitch for. And when they know that, for example, if they know that young people are registered to vote en masse, even if you don't end up voting, and I shouldn't be encouraging that, obviously you should vote, then politicians know that when they formulate policies when it comes to elections, they have to pitch stuff to you. The reason why they always pitch stuff to older people is because they know that they're, one, registered to vote and they're more likely to vote. So I think the very minimum you can do is letting your presence be known to politicians so that they can't just get away with like trebling tuition fees. They can't just get away with like scrapping the EMA. They can't just get away with, for example, not having the right adequate mental health provision. Like all of the things that are really important to our generation and future generations, they have to act on it because they know that if they don't, there is a political consequence for them.
So what kind of inspired the creation of the Give an X campaign?
Yeah, I guess what inspired the Give an X campaign, and like you were really at the heart and center of it, is that we wanted to do things different because we know that young people care about issues. We know that they care about whether they've got a decent roof over their heads or a job that pays them basic respect or dignity. The problem is they don't see traditional forms of politics as a vehicle to address the issues that they care about. So, you know, when we were talking about this right from the start, what we wanted to do was really around how do we make politics more fun? How do we go to where young people are? What do they do in their day-to-day social, digital lives? How can we connect with them in those spaces? And, you know, some of the really exciting parts, which I know we'll get into, but, you know, like working with like Ben & Jerry's, giving out free ice cream to encourage young people to register to vote. Like the Lime bikes, you know, like we know that a lot of young people, especially in London or like in urban cities, will use the dockless bikes, the Lime bikes, to get around to go visit their family, friends, to go shop. And, you know, whilst they're doing that, they can also register to vote. Or if you're going to the pictures to watch a movie, for example, you can quickly register to vote just 2 minutes before. So it was just about making it much more accessible, more fun, and more relatable in a way that people can really, it's like what you do with this podcast, right? It's like taking big issues of the day and making it relatable to your audience. And that's what we're trying to do with the Give an X campaign.
Why do you think it's taken till now and like the creation of the Give an X campaign for politics to go where the young people are?
Because I think, unfortunately, you know, it always takes a group of people to start something.
Yeah.
And I think the way we know this, right, like people like me and you aren't really represented in politics. And for a long time, it suited people for politics to work a certain way or for only for a group of people. And it's going to need people like me and you and others who are watching this podcast who come from underrepresented backgrounds to say, do you know what? We need to do things differently because we understand the people that we're trying to represent and the people that we're trying to sort of engage in the system. So, you know, it has to start somewhere, you know, like Nelson Mandela's movement to sort of change South Africa started somewhere, like no one done it before. And he was the big driver behind that, you know, Martin Luther King, you know, Barack Obama, he didn't sort of sit there and say there was never a black president before. He had to be the first one. And, so, you know, there are many people who led to him going on to being the first black president, but someone has to start this work. And, you know, this is hopefully the start of something that's going to really transform young voters in this country for the next decades that we see.
It does really well for my ego when you're like talking about people like Barack Obama and then me.
Yeah. you can be.
No.
Like, you know, obviously you've got a very powerful voice in terms of how you use your platform to really engage like young women, particularly young women of color. Class plays a role in it and it's a powerful voice and you should definitely use that.
I mean, that wasn't me fishing for compliments.
Yeah. She paid me to say that.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, you should probably put a disclaimer on that bit. It's bad. But you know, I registered to vote such a long time ago. I think I literally remember the moment because you can register to vote when you're 16, but you can't actually vote until you're 18.
Yeah.
So I think the moment I was eligible to register, I registered because it was so normal to me to like register to go and vote. But so what actually is involved in the process? Because I haven't done it for a long time.
So it's very easy. Like literally you can like just go on Google and just put register to vote or gov.uk/register to vote. And it's literally an online form. Like it's like an official government website. Takes you like literally like up to 5 minutes, depending on how fast you can work the system. But you can even do it in 2 minutes. And you just put your name, your address, your date of birth, you know, how long have you lived at your address, your national insurance number, that's all you need. And then it registers you to vote. So it's very, very simple to do. I think the issue is that they've changed the law like probably about 5-6 years ago where it meant that traditionally, like let's say you registered to vote when you were 16.
Yeah.
If you don't reconfirm your details, you just automatically fall off the electoral roll.
Yeah, that happens.
Which is why we have more than 4.3 million young people who are currently missing from the electoral roll.
Okay.
Because a lot of people aren't even aware that they have to keep re-registering. And we also don't have a system. Like right now, you as Sharon Gaffka can't go on Google. If you're like unsure about whether you're registered to vote, there's no system that tells you whether you are registered to vote or not.
Okay.
So if you're unsure about whether you're registered to vote, to be on the safe side, you just re-register to vote, which is bonkers. But that's one of the things that we want to campaign to change in the long term, which is basically that we need to, you know, make these sorts of things more accessible to young people, or not just young people, but everyone generally.
I mean, you were saying that I've got a lot of questions, and I was like, oh, he's probably going to answer them before I even asked. You've literally answered most of the questions. No, you just make my job so much easier, so it's fine.
Am I that boring that you haven't got any other questions to ask me?
I have a lot of questions. Like, politics is one of those really, people think it's a really dry subject, but it's actually something that's so important to be able to just sit there and talk about it. And, you know, I've been interested in politics for a long period of time, and I'm sure you have as well, because of the things that our families have had to go through, as opposed to like actually being taught it in schools. And like, this is probably an opportunity for a lot of people, I mean, even myself included, at the age of 28, to actually sit down and ask people the questions about why voting is important to me. How do I know? Like, so many people, you were saying, so many young people are interested in politics, have a lot of issues that are important to them. When Dan, your colleague, and I went to a school in London, every single person in that classroom had issues they cared about. But why does that not translate from issues they care about to the polling station?
Because I think the problem is politics isn't accessible. So I think when you start using like the jargons, like, you know, like when you even say the word politics, people get put off.
Yeah.
Because it comes with a lot of, you know, like negativity to young people. So for example, like firstly, we're not educated about politics in this country.
Yeah.
So it's not that people don't care about the issues, but they can't relate the political institutions, or they don't see the political institutions as agencies to change, because no one's ever said to you, hey, by the way, if you're really upset about, for example, the way your transport system works or the way your bins are collected, this is what you have to do, or this is why you vote. We live in a democracy. What is a democracy? What is politics? What is voting? Why do we vote? How do you continue to engage with your, like, we learn none of that through school. So I think firstly, education is a big factor. And if you come from a lower socioeconomic background, you're more likely to be disadvantaged, because if you've got parents, for example, who went to university, who could teach you this stuff at home because you don't learn at school, you're more likely to sort of know how to get about. But if you're someone like me, for example, whose parents didn't go to school, can't speak English, for example, then it's like, I'm not really going to get much from them.
Yeah.
I'm also not going to get much from my education system because they don't teach me. So I think education is one. Second thing is representation that we spoke about. Like, you know, so much research shows, and not just in terms of voting, but if there are, like, it's like a company, if it doesn't look, there's no one there that looks like you or sounds like you, you're less likely to engage in it. And the reality is that politics is still dominated by older white men. The average age of a councillor when I first stood was 66, which is, you know, bonkers, if you ask me. The fact that, you know, it's just, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is obviously scandals don't help. So, you know, not to get too political, but, you know, if you're saying to people that you should stay at home during COVID and you should sacrifice not seeing your family, friends, your loved ones, but then, like, you know, the Prime Minister's having a party in Downing Street, people obviously are going to say, well, why should I engage in a system where people, like, you know, are making up laws that they're not even following themselves? Or why should I engage in a system that doesn't work for me? Because, you know, the reality is, again, is that a lot of young people are facing there's a crisis around mental health. There's a crisis around the cost of living crisis. There's a crisis around, like, the standard of living just generally. There's a crisis around our NHS and our health system in all of these areas. And it's like nothing works in this country no more. So it's like, why should you engage in a system that doesn't work for you? So I think that's the reason why you don't really get people going to the polling station, because they don't believe that the system can make a change for them.
Then it's like I'm trying to explain to a lot of people and a lot of my followers that the only way the system can be changed to work for you is by showing up to the polling station.
100%.
But then a lot of young people are saying to me, well, because of the way that our electoral system works, so if people don't know, we have a first past the post system where you vote for your MP, and then that makes up the majority of the part, like the biggest party makes government. But then, like, as opposed to PR, whereas everybody's vote means something. So how can I turn around to my followers and tell them to go to the polling station and say that their vote will actually amount to something?
Yeah. There's always enough voters that can make a difference.
Yeah.
The problem is if every one person thinks that your vote doesn't make a difference, then, like, you know, I think there was this interesting stat in 2019, which is that there was more people that didn't vote than that voted for the Conservative Party or the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Like, there were some seats, like, I think there was one in I think it's Stirling in Scotland, where, like, the MP won by 2 votes. Kensington, the MP won by like 20 votes or 23 votes or whatever it was. There's always more people that don't vote than that votes. So I think, if you think that, then obviously your vote is not going to make a difference. I think, like you say, it's like you have to start somewhere. The problem is like we live in like a consumer-driven world.
Yeah.
Where like, for example, you buy an iPhone, you go into Apple and you buy an iPhone, you either get it instantly or you get told when you're going to get it, like whether it's a week, 2 delivery, whenever, right? Politics doesn't work like that. So it's not like you vote and instantly you get something back.
Yeah.
There's a process for engagement and nothing stops at voting. So I think, and that's why education is important, is because people, because they don't understand the system, because we're never educated about it, they have like unrealistic expectations of what sometimes politicians can deliver, or they don't know what to ask for.
Yeah.
So I think, all of these things are interlinked, but I think the very minimum that we can all do is be registered to vote so that they know, that politicians know that they have to trust or they have to deliver for our people.
So when it comes to voting, apart from people listening to podcasts like this or like tuning into the news, which we know a lot of young people don't want to do because they don't want to engage with mainstream media because of the mental health crisis, what other resources are available for people like me when it comes to looking at candidates and parties? Like, how do I know what I'm voting for without watching the news?
Yeah, so there isn't a lot, which is a shame. But there are some stuff, like, for example, Democracy Club. There's like, I think it's like wheredoivote.org. I've got that really wrong, by the way. But
so I'll put all the like links somewhere. So
but it is like Democracy Club. Like they have this thing where it tells you like your polling station and it tells you who all the candidates are. It doesn't tell you what they stand for, but it tells you who your list of like candidates are. I think for some time there has been like, there is some stuff, ad hoc stuff that you could find constituency based where like it'll be, who's standing for what. And I'm sure as we get closer to the elections, when the manifestos are announced soon to, like, it will be announced by the time.
It's the 19th of June.
It will be, yeah. So it will be announced very soon. People will have ways that they can disseminate that information. I think the danger is like, there's a lot of like, there's going to be a point at which like there's just going to be so much information and that confuses people even more. And the whole like misinformation, disinformation thing is a whole different realm as well.
All the AI stuff that's coming out.
Exactly. But I think, like you've got to vote based on your values.
Yeah.
On what you think. Sometimes, like you're going to look at a manifesto, you're not going to agree with everything.
Yeah.
But you need to look at, for example, what are your values? What are the party's values? And decide ultimately which one do you think closely aligns to your values and how you want to live your life and who's more relatable to you. Or it could be that you vote for who you think is going to be a better MP for you.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to think of it in a very local context.
Because I think maybe that's where people go wrong. They don't think about politics in a local context. They only think about it like nationally.
Yeah.
But a lot of young people have said to me that one of the things they're most worried about is like having voter guilt. Is like they go to the polling station, they vote, the vote goes in their favour, and like whoever they voted for makes up government, but then the country's in a worse off position, or like things that they voted for, they didn't deliver on their promises in the manifesto, and it gives them fear. And I don't know what it is about young voters that like have that fear. 'Cause I've never heard like my parents say they have that fear.
Yeah.
But I've only heard young voters say they've got that fear.
I think they've got that fear because they've been cheated. Like there is a sense of resentment. Like, I mean, when I first turned 18, so I couldn't vote in 2010 because my birthday's in July and the election was in May.
Okay.
So I missed out by 2 months to vote in 2010. And like since then, it's got like bad to worse. Like, as I say, tuition fees like tripled. EMA, I mean, luckily I was the last year like benefited from EMA, the educational maintenance allowance. Brexit happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like the budget that messed up the economy, like the impact it had on like mortgages and rents and all that sort of stuff. Like, there is so much, like, I think the problem is people haven't seen good come from the system.
Yeah.
So therefore, like, naturally, they do feel a sense of like guilt. But I think the key thing is like, as I said earlier, it's not just about voting. Voting is like the very starting point of it. It's more about how do you continue to engage with your, like your representatives? How do you, get involved in consultations? How do you, for example, like, how do you demand change in a different way that isn't just about voting? And I think if you pitch everything about, the problem is we pitch everything about the voting. And because everything's about the voting, it sets this like weird expectation that basically the world's going to change overnight after a vote. And it's not, I mean, I went to like, I'm going to ramble on now, but I was in Tunisia.
Yeah.
And I was talking to this guy, like, he must have been like 23 or something. And I basically said to him, they're going to have the local elections for the first time. And I said to him, are you going to vote? And he said to me, no. And I said to him, why won't you vote? And he goes to me, because he was very decisive. And he said to me, Mete, he goes, we literally had a revolution and nothing changed. Okay. You know, like when they had the Arab Spring, it was literally a revolution. And he felt like nothing changed after. Things were still the same for him.
Yeah.
And I guess we live in a very different context to what they do in, like, say, in Tunisia or other parts of the world where democracy isn't as strong. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's like, you can't just look at those things as like one moment. So you have to think about what is the best way to continue engaging. And that's the role for organizations or people like us, is to make sure that young people do have a vehicle in which they can continue to engage.
Yeah, no, of course. I was going to, this wasn't on my official list of questions. And I mean, if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But obviously there are pledges or conversations about pledges about lowering the voting age.
Yeah.
How do you think that like is going to impact like campaigns like Give an X? Do you think like lowering the voting age is going to be a good thing?
Yeah, 100%. Because I feel like what research shows you is, so for example, if you voted when you were first eligible to vote, let's say you were like 18, 19, 20, whatever it was, you're more likely to carry on voting. Like once you're of eligible
age,
habit. It's a habit, yeah. It's like growing a habit. So if you can capture people between 16 to 18, because obviously they're in like sixth form, college or whatever it is, and they're more likely to vote, then the research shows that you're more likely to keep them voting as they get to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s and whatever. So I think, you know, like, I mean, the arguments are so clear for it. You can do all sorts of things when you're 16. You could be working, you could be like joining the army, all of those sorts of things.
I find absolutely insane.
Yeah, but you can't vote.
I think actually I was in, how old was I? I was in school when they tripled tuition fees. So like the people that had just left school, they just about got in.
Oh wow, you're way younger than me.
You always make out that I'm really old.
I missed the tuition fees by a year. So I was lucky.
All right, keep putting salt in
I'm
my wounds.
I'm one of the $3,000 people.
When you think about your first time voting, if older you or you now could talk to the person who was voting for the first time, what would you like to say to that person?
I would say, I know that, like, you know, you want to see the world change, and I know that you want to, you know, and believe that, you know, set your expectations high, because ultimately that is your job is to set like as a citizen, you should always aspire to the best, and the role of politicians is to serve you, and to make your dreams a reality. And you should never forget that they're there to serve you, not the other way around, right? But also, the very minimum we can all do, like, play your part. Like, don't like, we have a campaign called "Don't Sit on the Sidelines." Yeah, don't sit on the sideline. Like, the minimum you can do, and literally only takes you like a few minutes, is register to vote. Yeah. Because once people start seeing the polling, the registration figures, and they think, oh my God, you know, we got 153,000 people. That was breaking the record for local elections. Yeah. If we get like 1 million or 2 million young people registered to vote, people are going to be like, you know, politicians can't just ignore that. When they bring out their manifestos, they're going to have to say, hey, like, we need to actually make sure that we've got something for these people. Otherwise, they're going to vote somewhere, because if they're registered to vote in the last 2 or 3 weeks, they're not just going to like sit at home and not vote. Most of them will vote. Yeah. So where are these like 750,000 voters or the million voters going to go? And they're going to have to bring out pledges. So like, play your part and don't sit on the sidelines. And more importantly, you're not just letting yourself down by not voting. You'll also be letting down your whole generation of young people.
Well, that's like when parents say, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
Do you know what?
That's what the election smelled like to me then. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, and like, I hate the whole thing about like, if you don't vote, don't complain. I used to hate when people used to say that to me. Yeah. But there is a logic to it.
Yeah, of course.
Which is that, like, ultimately, like, picture yourself as a politician, yeah? Like, and you probably will be at some point. But if you've got 2 events and you've got half an hour, like, only half an hour, you've got 2 events. One is with like 50 people that is going to vote, and one is with 50 people that most likely ain't going to vote. Yeah. And you need about 40 votes to win. Where are you going to go?
Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean? It's not that you don't care about the other group. It's just that, you know, like, realistically, you're going to go somewhere where you're more, like, there has to be a benefit for you. Otherwise, why would you? So I don't like the saying of like, if you don't vote, don't complain. But there is a truth to it. And it's like, in other countries, people face mad barriers to get the rights that we have. Like, it literally takes you a few minutes to just like sit there and just like register to vote. So like, don't miss out.
I feel like it is the fact that at the moment we do take for granted that we do live in a democracy. Yeah. Obviously, National Voter Registration Day for the general election is the 18th of June.
Yeah.
And the party manifestos are on the 19th of June.
Mm-hmm.
So do we think right now that political parties are sitting there anticipating an increase in registration from young people?
100%. Yeah, there's I mean, like the work we've done, I think we've really sort of like shaped the political system a little bit, and loads of people heard about our campaign. And I also think, you know, like the fact that we're getting loads of like brands and celebrities on board, I think is an indicative of that, and loads of politicians that are interested in our campaign. I also think there's been some really interesting polls that shows that like a lot of young people, especially like, you know, like the Rishi Sunak announced the whole like national service.
Yep.
And I feel like in a weird way, like those sorts of things gets the conversation going, because it's like, what is the offer for young people? And there was a poll that came in on the back of that when he made the announcement, and he said that record numbers of young people are expected to vote, because like that clearly motivated people one way or another, whether they support it or not, to think, oh, like I'm going to go out and have a say because I either don't like this thing and don't want it to happen, or I support it, whichever way it is. So I do think, you know, like that there is going to be an appeal to young people in this election, because, you know, I'm very confident that there's going to be like over 1 million people who's going to register to vote in the next like couple of weeks.
I think that it would be really interesting to know if people in CCHQ or like the Labour Party headquarters or whatever are going to be sitting up at midnight after National Voter Registration Day is done, rewriting their manifestos to try and get all the like pledges for young people in.
Or they might just do like you know, they might not be able to rewrite the manifesto, but what they might do is they might like, you know, there's nothing stopping them from making a further announcement. So for example, like they could be like a week later, like maybe we need to announce, you know, this or that. I mean, it's interesting because, like, you know, you've already had one leader who's announced the votes at 16.
Yeah.
And then you've had another leader who's announced, you know, like the national service. So, like, those are two big things for young people, whether it's bad or good.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation, but yeah.
What was the most rewarding part of seeing young people become more politically engaged through the Give an X campaign?
And for me, it relates back to like my story, because, you know, like my parent came here in the 90s from Cyprus, can't speak English, brought up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in London, brought up on a council estate where you often felt like no one cared about your voice. When my youth club shut down, like no one lifted a finger. And I think seeing young people take ownership of their lives, for me, gives me a lot of satisfaction, because it sort of like, it goes back to the roots of why I do what I do, which is, you know, like it's all about giving people who look and sound like me or who come from similar backgrounds or shared experiences, and really thought, you know what, I'm not going to wait around for people to take, you know, ownership of my life, or like to pick me up and take me somewhere. I'm going to actually take ownership, and, you know, we can all play our part. So for me, that's the biggest satisfaction that I get out of it.
Yeah, I guess like for me, it's always about my ballot paper is going to be majority, they're all male, they're majority white.
Yeah.
So like for me, that's zero representation. And I think one of the big things that, like, the reasons why I wanted to get involved in Give an X is because I was always told politics is not a place for someone like me.
Yeah.
And that there is no, like, I shouldn't really matter because it's just not an environment that I belong to. But like being at the Next Gen conference and seeing how many young people, 700?
By the day, yeah.
Oh, okay. Seeing 700 young people that resembled something a little bit more like me, listening to somebody that resembled more like them. Because my only experience of politics when I was younger was my local MP coming into an all-girls school to try and talk to young girls about politics, but he was sat on his phone the whole time.
Yeah.
And then when I actually spoke to him recently, and I brought up the fact that he was on his phone the whole time, his phone went off and he stopped having this conversation with me to go on his phone. And I was like, so glad that you're not an MP anymore. But it's like, what motivated you to actually, like, so we don't want to talk about either our political affiliations, because we want this to be politically neutral and trying to encourage young people to vote no matter what their opinions are. But like coming into the UK or like growing up in the UK and not seeing yourself represented, how did you decide, I want to be a councillor or I want to go down politics, like the political route?
I didn't really decide that I wanted to be a councillor or go down the political route.
There's a lot of paperwork involved, so you must have had to like...
No, but it's kind of like, for me, it's like what I'm interested in is the issue, the vehicle that helps. Like, I will pursue any vehicle that I think can help me tackle, like help my aspiration of like tackling like social inequalities, tackling like climate change, all the issues that are like making democracy more accessible, all the issues that I very much care about. So like, it wasn't like I was like, when I first started to be a councillor, I was 20. I turned 21 when I got elected. But I didn't think to myself like when I was 19, oh my God, I'm gearing up to be a councillor. I didn't even know what a councillor was.
Like you didn't want to be a career politician.
Yeah, it just happened to be that like I was an activist in my community and someone said to me, oh, like maybe you should consider standing for your local council. Then I was like, what is a councillor? I didn't even know what, like I genuinely didn't know. And I was someone who was engaged, right?
Yeah.
Which shows you like the lack of education that we have. And for me, it was like being a councillor was important because I wanted to have a role in shaping my community because I knew that Hackney had changed so much because, you know, it used to be the place where I had the highest crime in the country, one of the highest levels of child poverty. Whereas now, like 20 years later, you know, it's like hipster part of London.
Yeah, it's like very up and coming.
Yeah, it's like home of the, like people now want to come to Hackney for a night out. Like that is crazy.
Which is wild to me.
Yeah, like, because when I was growing up, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It was like people used to wanted to get away from my borough. And like, I feel like a massive sense of pride, but I want to make sure that it actually works for people who are from the community. That's why I got involved. So when like I had a chance to be a councillor to help that aspiration, 100%, you know, like I was going to like pursue it. So for me, it's like, I didn't really grow up to think, oh, I'm going to be a politician. And also like you said as well, like you rarely get people that look like us through there. So yeah, I kind of like fell into it by luck. And who knows, like I might like not do it or I might do it. It just depends on what happens.
Given next campaign ambitions, National Voter Registration Day, what's the big goal? Because I know in the My Life, My Say office, everyone's probably running around like a headless chicken, trying to get everything over the line. This is going to come out just before National Voter Registration Day. So like, what is the goal?
So I had a conversation with my team about this.
Before coming here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were like, you know, they asked me that question when the election was called, like, what is the goal? And I said to them, 1 million.
You want to get 1 million on the 18th?
On
or
the
just
18th.
Okay.
1 million people.
I best get myself ready.
Yeah,
for
so
these conversations.
We've all got a big rock. But I think we could do it 100%. Maybe like, you know, 1 million in one day is like, might be a bit too much. But at least 1 million in a week. I believe we can do it.
Yeah, I think 1 million in a week's doable.
Yeah.
People that don't know, Mete is the reason why I didn't have any sleep on National Voter Registration Day last time.
I am the reason.
Yeah.
It's your campaign too.
Obviously, I care about it, but I was coming to London to do a nice leisurely women's hour. 12 hours later, I'm still in London doing Andrew Marr.
We appreciate you.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, that day you done a lot of like media.
I think, do you know what it is? It's nice to have people do media or like be in media that isn't going to cause more drama than reality TV. Because I think one thing that was really like kind of switching me off from politics, and I'm someone that's really engaged, is the fact that politicians are trying to make everything a joke or like battle it off against each other. Like no one cares about your inter-party drama. It's not Love Island. Like just crack on with whatever you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And stop trying to like wind each other up.
Yeah.
That's just my hot take on it. After James Cleverly's comments on Good Morning Britain today, that was just...
What did he say?
Ed Balls asked him if the removal of the European Human Rights Convention was going to be included in the Conservative Party manifesto. And he accused Ed Balls of clickbaiting him for social media views because Ed Balls was attached to the Labour Party. But he was asking a genuine question. He didn't answer it, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's just my hot take on it. I don't like James Cleverly anyway. He knows I don't like him.
Is he from your... No, he's not from your... Like,
no, but you can Google my name and James Cleverly's name and it's just...
I'm going to do that on the train back to the office.
Young people that are listening, or people in general that are listening to this, it's mostly young women that listen to Girls Know Nothing, but young people that are listening to this episode and that are still unsure about whether they should register to vote, whether their vote actually matters. Yeah. This is like your time to pitch them the reason why they have to be registered to vote.
No pressure.
No pressure. There's 1 million people that you have in your brain that you want to get registered.
I feel like you could do the pitch much better.
I've done my fair share of pitching. That's why you're a spokesperson for
the campaign.
I know, but you're the head of the campaign, so you have to get involved too.
So look, I think the reason why it's so important that you register to vote is whether you care about, like as I say, whether you've got a decent roof over your head or a job that pays you basic respect and dignity, or you care about your family, your friends, your neighbours. anyone and whoever you care about is so important. The minimum you can do is register to vote. Takes you literally a few minutes to do that. And it's just about making your presence be known to all of those people in power. It might not make a difference in terms of, like you might not immediately, for example, see the difference of your vote. But believe you me, it's just people in positions of power will know that they have to pitch to your community when they know that you're registered to vote. They can't ignore you because they know that you could turn up on the 4th of July and you could vote one way or the other way. So if you're in the field playing the game, then they know that they have to pitch to you. If you're not there, then they know that they don't have to pitch to you. I don't know, did I do all right?
You did fine. I mean, there's a reason why I get chased up the high street with people trying to hand out pamphlets, and it's because they know that I'm registered to vote.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a reason why they're interested in talking to me and what I have to say.
Yeah.
It's fine. After this election, we can focus on getting 16-year-olds the right to vote.
There's so much more to focus on. But this is the first step. And it doesn't stop. That's the other bit as well. It's like, it's not just going to be like...
Don't I know it?
Like, it's not going to be like, oh, we've had this election now and that's it. Like, let's just shut shop and then wait till 5 years later. This is like, actually, okay, what can we do? What's the next bit? And then how do we build up to even get 2 million people next time around?
Yeah. And about teaching people how to actually engage in the political system. Having these conversations is really important because no one else is having them for young people.
100%.
And I know that My Life, My Say is doing a lot of work behind the scenes with Next Gen, with Given X and with their commercial partners. And actually it's when I went to a panel and we were talking about influencers in the up and coming general election, and people that follow traditional politics think that they don't have any importance or relevance. And actually we know they do, because brands are ever more becoming more political and outspoken about the things that they believe in, because that's what their consumers believe in and they want to represent them. So, I think traditional form of politics will die out when the Instagram generation comes in, and we're going to see more personality politics and crossovers on social media. So young people are the way forward.
There's your pitch.
Yeah, there you go. It's all right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it.